All right, let's do this last problem. So I want to go ahead and divide p of x, which is equal to x cubed minus 7x plus 6, into x minus 1. Now, we have to be very careful when we have missing terms, because usually when we do long division and synthetic division, we want to make sure that we have all the decreasing terms. So if you notice here, we have an x cubed, we have an x, and then we have a constant. But we are missing our x squared term. So basically we can rewrite p of x as x cubed plus 0x squared minus 7x plus 6, because we can go ahead and assume that the coefficient in front of the x squared is going to be 0 because it's not there. So we have to be very, very careful when whenever we do long division or synthetic division, that we include the missing terms. Okay, now we can go ahead and divide. So I'm going to do both ways, long division and then synthetic. So I'm going to have x cubed plus 0x squared minus 7x plus 6. And then I'm going to divide this into x minus 1. All right, so same thing as before. I have x cubed plus 0x squared. I want to get rid of this x cubed, so I'm going to multiply this x by x squared. I'm going to place it right above the x squared. So x times x squared gives me x cubed. X squared times negative 1 gives me negative x squared. Everything is going to now change sign. So this is going to be a negative. This is now going to be a positive. This goes away, and you have x squared by itself. Now that I have x squared by itself, move down the negative 7x. And let's go ahead and do the same trick again. So I need to get an x squared. How can I get an x squared with an x? Multiply it by an x. Okay, so a positive x. Multiply this. I'm going to get x squared. Then I'm going to get negative x. Remember, everything is going to change sign. So now this is going to be a negative. This is going to be a positive. Now see how this goes away. I have a negative 6x, and then now I'm going to bring down the 6. So this is going to be a positive 6. Okay, now I want to go ahead and get rid of this negative 6. So I'm going to multiply this by a negative 6, knowing that it's going to go ahead and change sign. I'm going to multiply negative 6 times 6 gives me 6x, negative 6x. And then negative 6 times negative 1 is going to give me positive 6. Since it's down there, everything changes sign, positive, negative. This cancels out, and I get 0. So in the end, I got a remainder of 0. So I have x cubed minus 7x plus 6 over x minus 1 is equal to x squared plus x minus 6. Okay? All right. So now I can do exactly the same thing with synthetic division. And with synthetic division, it's actually going to be a little faster, because now I'm going to go ahead and put in all my coefficients. So a 1. Remember, it's also going to be a 0 for the x squared term, 0. Then negative 7, and then a 6. Remember, for the d of x, I have to set this equal to 0, or you can just change the sign. So now the number up here is going to be a 1. So I'm going to bring down the 1. 1 times 1 gives me 1. 0 plus 1 is going to go ahead and give me 1. 1 times 1 gives me another 1. This is going to give me negative 6. Negative 6 times 1 gives me negative 6. And I'll get a 0. Okay? So when I divided x cubed minus 7x plus 6 divided by x minus 1, what I ended up getting, since this was originally a cubic, this is now going to be a squared. So it's going to be x squared plus x minus 6. And there's no remainder in this case. So notice that we get exactly the same answer. Now, the cool thing about this, when remainder, so when the remainder is 0, notice how it's 0 here and it's 0 here, then the divisor, or this value, then d of x equals 0 is a 0 for p of x. Okay? So we already know that that's going to work that's gonna happen where it crosses the x-axis. So what's really helpful is that knowing that that's a 0 is really, really cool, because then what I can do the following thing. It actually is really helpful to factor, because if you see x cubed minus 7x plus 6, well, this is really hard to factor. Very, very, like if you think about it, it's a little bit difficult. So I can't do the regular terms that I have. I can't use quadratic formula because it's a cube. But what I can do is that, well, if I know that something is a 0, so I know that x minus 1 is a 0, what I can do now, after I use synthetic division, x squared plus x minus 6, what I can do is I can multiply this x minus 1 to the other side. So I'm going to multiply both sides, or everything, by x minus 1. Okay, so I'm going to have x cubed minus 7x plus 6 over x minus 1, and I'm going to multiply this by x minus 1. Okay, equals this x squared plus x minus 6, and then this is going to be also x minus 1. So this cancels out this, and now what I'm left over is that x cubed minus 7x plus 6 equals x squared plus x minus 6 times x minus 1. What's really cool about this is that now this is really easy to factor, because this is just two numbers that multiply to get -6 and add up to get 2. That's just going to be x plus 3 and x minus 2, right? So this is just factorable really, really easily. And then the other one is just x minus 1. So this is what we're going to call the complete factorization of this number. So notice how it was very simple to go ahead and factor with long division. So the only thing that's really difficult about this is that we need to make sure that we know a 0. If we don't know a 0, then we have to do rational zeros and plug in, chug, and it can be really, really annoying. But once we know that something is a 0, it's really, really easy to factor. Okay, so that concludes the videos for this week. Let me know if you have any questions.